Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video, where today I'm going over tournament tips to help you get better at events. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video, if you found it useful and helpful. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, and a affiliate link at Emma Games, and a affiliate link and discount code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But yeah, the goal behind today's video is part of like my guides, especially for newer players, but even experienced players alike. It's just tips for how to get better at tournaments. So once again, if you're trying to improve with Kill Team, there's not going to be specific thing like you need to run X team to make sure you're going to win. It's just going to be general guidelines and principles, which I use myself, which I find very helpful. And I've repeated over the years, either via when I was doing Underworld or even when I'm playing Kill Teams now, because I've been playing competitive Warhammer for like nearly 10 years at this point. And yeah, you know, these are things I use myself, which I find really helpful. And hopefully if I explain them to you, they'll be helpful for you as well, no matter where you are, whether it be a new player or very experienced. So let's get on with it. So first off, if you want to get better at tournaments, you will need to practice. This is kind of the most obvious thing, but practice can take many different routes. So kind of like when you want to get better at Kill Team, for practice, you really need to play at least one game every 2 weeks, you know, nothing too crazy. Ideally, if you wanted to be like very competitive, at least one game a week, maybe even 2 games a week. The thing is, when you do your practice, you have to do it in such a way that's sustainable for you. There is no point practicing like doing 8 games a week if you aren't learning anything and you're feeling really stressed out. You need to do it in such a way that it doesn't burn you out, which will be different depending on every person. For example, I can probably get away with 3 games a week, like maybe 4 as my limit, but I find that very like taxing, especially, you know, when you have to balance it with work and stuff. And I usually get away with like 1 game a week or every 2 weeks. Sometimes if I'm really packed, 1 game a month. So it's like not too bad, because especially when it comes to practice, it's not just playing games, it's also like reading and researching stuff, which I'll touch upon later. But also when you practice, it's very important that you diversify who you play against. So the common thing I see is like people go, oh, I play tons of practice games, but I only play the same 2 people or the same person. And the problem is, I've seen it happen to tons of people. The more you play one person or a same group of people constantly, you don't actually improve. You learn how to beat them, not the actual matchup itself. And, you know, because you get these players, like I've seen them go like, oh, wow, yeah, I've won this game all the time. I've played this matchup tons of times against my friend, always beat them. Then they play it in a tournament and then lose because they're like, oh, my friend didn't do this. And it's the worst thing about it. It's kind of like this catch-22, because you want to play more games and you generally like playing people at your level. And it's obviously, if there's someone you're playing along with lots of times, it's easier for you to get into the practicing sphere, which is the problem, because as I said, the more you play against one kind of person specifically, you learn how to play against them and their habits over the actual teams themselves. So this is why it's always important to like reach out to your friendly local gaming groups or clubs, try and like diversify where you play. And this also helps when you're playing at tournaments, because tournaments can be practice too. I use tournaments as practice, which generally you shouldn't. But once you've got a good base knowledge of the game, you know, that's why it's really good when I'm in my tournament mode. I try and go to as many tournaments as possible, always trying different events, even if it's like, you know, this one event's going to be small, but I've never played there before, because as I've found during my time when I've been playing Warhammer competitively, different areas play Kill Team very differently. It happens for every Warhammer game. For example, generally UK players are quite more defensive, while American players can be more aggressive. But that's just like the general parts, and different parts of the UK play very differently to other parts of the UK. And it's the same everywhere else. That's why it's really good not only to find different opponents, but play at different events so you always have this exposure. Obviously, if you're traveling to different events, it has to be like feasible for you to do. Like, I'm not saying like drive yourself broke by playing at all these events, right? But really exposing yourself to new players and new opponents who play teams differently really helps improve yourself, because then you get to learn to see stuff you wouldn't have expected before. But that's why practice is so important. And it's not just the physical aspect of playing the game. You can also self-practice by like making sure to always read through your rules, seeing if you've missed anything, talk to people, talk to friends, try and diversify tactics, going like, I've got this game plan, but how would you approach my team? Or is there anything you think is wrong with that? That's another way to practice which people miss. I see people just going like, oh, I've done my games XXX, like this is how I play. This is the only way to practice. There are multiple ways to practice, and it's a very deep subject, which is why it's kind of like, you know, people to go, oh, play games and you're fine. There's so many layers into that, which is why it can be quite daunting, especially if you want to get better at events. But hopefully that breaks it down for you a bit. As I said, it's always a very deep subject, but basically you want to play lots of games. Well, not that's tolerable for you. Try and always play varied opponents. And remember, there's more ways to practice than just playing physical games. Next, this is like the second biggest thing, and tournament organizers everywhere will agree with me. Please read the pack. Reading the pack is incredibly important when it comes to your event, because not every event is going to be the same way. And when you read the pack, not only does it tell you the format of the event, it tells how pairings are done, how placings are done, how prize supports are done, when the rounds are, when the event starts, when the event ends, as well as some packs also include where you can go to eat, what's nearby, you know, if they don't have food and drink on their premises, what you can do with that, as well as cut deadlines for cutoff dates when it comes to faction submissions, as well as when like they will accept or refuse new FAQs and erratas. It is incredibly important to read the pack, and you know, it literally just read the pack. Read the pack, please. It will help you so much, because especially when it comes down to events and pairings, as well as final placings. For example, if events aren't using like opponent's win percentage as the final placing metric for a tournament, you may go like, oh, then if it's doing total wins, then total victory points. My play style actually doesn't do that well, especially if there's not going to be one undefeated winner. I play to win, but not in a way that maximizes my victory points. Maybe I now need to play in a way that makes sure I maximize my victory points every game, or maybe I should play a different team that's suitable to this pack, right? Because if you're wanting to win events, you really need to focus on how the pairing metrics are done, how the placing metrics are done, how many players there are, and how many rounds there are, and how many undefeated players there are going to be. Because you can have events where there's always going to be one undefeated player, there's going to be multiple undefeated players, or there potentially could be no undefeated players. For example, if you have an event with less players compared to the amount of rounds they are, so you play more rounds, even though you would reach an undefeated player, let's say at round 5, but it's a 6-round tournament. That kind of stuff to keep in mind is hugely important. Like, for example, if placings go off total victory points and opponent's win percentage, and there's going to be only one undefeated winner, you don't have to max your victory points every game. You just have to play in a way that allows you to win, even if it's just minor wins, because at the end of the day, if you're aiming to get to that first place podium, all you need to do is play in such a way that makes you win without playing too risky. But on the flip side, if it does come down to total victory points and there's more other players, then you have to play in a way that maxes. And then you have to look at pairings, because how you score can affect how you pair, especially if tournaments don't do random pairings based on your ranking. For example, most events do pairing players by the amount of wins they on, and then in that bracket of wins, randomly pairing people to prevent like submarining. But other events pair people based on the top two, like they'll do top down. So basically the best people play the best every round, and it like tiers down, or the best will play the bottom. That's why it's really important to read the pairing metrics, because especially how you place, if it's random, you don't have to worry too much. But if they're not using random pairings for basing on your wins, then you kind of need to play a bit more smartly and aware of that, which is kind of the importance of the pack. But also, you need to see how long rounds are. Most tournaments are 2 hours and hopefully should be 2-hour rounds, but some tournaments are also 1 hour and 45. Some are even 1 hour and a half. Some tournaments are 2 hours and 15 minutes or 2 hours and a half. You really need to know how long the rounds are in your tournaments so you can budget your time correctly. If it's 2 hours, you don't need to worry too much. If it's less than 2 hours, you probably need to keep more in mind about the time. But if it's more than 2 hours, then you can kind of play in a way where you can relax a bit more and not chase the time too much, which is why it's so important. And also you can find out how long the breaks are. So some tournaments do half-hour lunches, 45, an hour. Some tournaments also do breaks between rounds as 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or half an hour. Once again, that's really important because, as I'll touch on later, it allows you how you want to plan your day for that event. It's really important. Also, obviously, you need to know when the tournament starts. It's really important. But you have to remember, a lot of tournaments have a half an hour to an hour grace period for registration before the event actually starts. So you do have some affordability for running late, even though you shouldn't. But it's just really important. The pack explains so much. Also explains how like other awards are. So some events might have painting awards, they may not. Awards for best sporting player, all that kind of such. Really just read the pack. Stop messaging the TO constantly. Obviously, if you have queries about the pack, email the TO, contact them, but generally read the pack, please. Just read the pack. Next is meta awareness. So this isn't like the easiest thing to do, but when you go to events, not only are you looking at if you're trying to do well, you need to be aware of what the meta is at the moment. So like previously, we were in a very like balanced meta, but it was kind of heavily favored to Eldari teams. So that's kind of something you'd have to keep in mind, like what kind of teams would do well into Eldari teams, because I'm very likely to see Eldari teams. I could run an elite team, but if I run into one of these Eldari teams, I'm not going to do so well. However, if I run a larger horde team, I probably actually will have a good time. I just have to be cautious about the elite kill teams about. But that's the kind of thing you need to see what's going to be popular. Now you can do this by looking at stats, talking to people, being in Discord, watching content creators, that kind of stuff, because they generally will give you a good idea of the meta. For example, in the last meta, not only were Corsairs very popular, but we still had Plague Marines and Warp Covenant still really popular, despite how disadvantageous those two teams in the meta were. I mean, they are still really good, but they weren't as strong as they were before after the last balanced data slate. So that's what you need to keep in mind is like, oh, I'm going to plan for Eldari teams, but also I still need to keep in the mind the back about elite teams. Also, metas change where you're playing. If you're playing in your local, like you're playing at your local tournament, you kind of have a good idea. And if it's a local tournament for local players, you'll know how many, like basically what your meta is going to bring. A lot of people actually don't like running elites depending on where they are. They may just prefer horde teams. So you may be going into a horde meta. Stuff like that. It's really important to see what's popular and what you're likely to run into. Another thing is like melee teams. If you're playing at an event where you're expecting a lot of melee teams, maybe you can go for an anti-melee team, which can really do well into that, such as with like the off-meta teams I did a video about just gone past. That's really useful. This is a difficult thing to gauge because the meta will generally be changing every 3 months and with every release. But it's also very important because, as I forgot to touch on in the pack, especially based on the kill zones your event is using. Some events are beta decimal. Well, some events use beta decimal, a lot don't. Some are Vocus only, some are Gallowdark only, some are a mix of Vocus and Gallowdark. That can affect the meta you're bringing. For example, if you're going into an event that's using only Gallowdark, you can probably go like, actually, I think I'm probably going to run a melee team. But it's stuff like that. That's why being aware of the meta, especially if you want to do well, you kind of have to have some knowledge about it. And especially, while I always recommend playing what you like, if you're bringing a weaker team, you really need to be aware of the meta to see how common your bad matchups are going to be and if you've prepped well enough for them. So that's why it's always important, and this is a bit harder to do, but it's always the right thing to do. Like, as I said, the easiest way is to talk with friends, go on Discord, content creators, that kind of stuff. Really great way to do. And you don't even have to watch us content creators. Just like chatting to your local community and like the competitive players you know should give you a good enough head to help with this. Now we come on to one of the most important steps, in my opinion. Now this is a hybrid subject and it's called snacks, hydration and sleep. So over the years, especially as I've gotten older, right, I've learned of important things to keep yourself going through events. Tournaments can be very draining, both mentally and physically, right? So you don't have to be like fit. It helps. Like the interesting thing, I was looking when I was really big into Street Fighter, I was doing a lot of research into like the Japanese players because they're generally the best. And the way they approached like competitive fighting games was very interestingly. They say it's not only just the mind, it's the body as well. So that's why they're all quite, they do a lot of working out, you know? I go to the gym regularly, that's fine, but you don't have to do that. The important thing I found for like the general player is make sure you've got snacks, right? Especially if you're doing a 4-round tournament. 3-round tournaments don't matter so much because it's usually going to be round 1, then lunch, then you got round 2 and 3. But for 4-round tournaments or longer, generally you're going to probably have round 1, then round 2, then lunch, then 3 and 4. Or some tournaments do round 1, lunch, 2, 3, 4. And between rounds 3 and 4, you usually need some kind of snack, especially when you think about it, especially if it's 2-hour rounds and you're doing 3 rounds consecutively. That's at least 6 hours of gameplay ignoring breaks. So that's why I try and always have like a protein bar or something. Try and go for something complex, like complex carbs, because they will break down slower. And it means you have a more dispersed like breakdown of energy throughout the day. Because if you like have simple carbs, like just pure chocolate, sure, you get that burst of energy for like half an hour, maybe an hour, but then it burns out very quickly and then you go into like a sugar low. So you kind of want complex carbs to help boost you. Also, you need to like stay hydrated, obviously. A lot of events have water stations nearby, whether it be water fountains or just like free water you can get. I always, when I go to tournaments now, bring a 2-liter bottle of water, like, you know, just in a reusable bottle, and then refill that as needed, as well as taking regular drink breaks, because your voice actually goes very quickly during events, because usually you're talking like a long time to your opponent, then your friends, you're talking a lot. Kill Team is a very communication heavy game, so you really need to stay hydrated, and it minimizes you getting these headaches as well, because at the end of the day, when I didn't used to drink as much, I would have these massive headaches, and then I realized it's just because I'm dehydrated, because you really underestimate how much water you lose just by talking alone. So it also helps, you know, with your concentration and focus. So like regular snacks and hydrations is very highly recommended. And then also sleep, right? Sleep is difficult, but I think people underestimate how important sleep is. Before events, I will always try to get at least 6 hours sleep, ideally 8. It's not the easiest thing, but having a good night's sleep before a tournament is really, really useful, right? It really helps so much. It means you're fully rested and you're relaxed. So when you've got a long day of gaming, or 2 days, especially if you're doing 2-day events, lets you rest enough so you're not so exhausted, because I think people forget how mentally and physical taxing tournaments can be, because you just have to do so much. You have to think, you know, you have to bring everything, you have to talk so much, you have to plan everything out. It can be really draining, especially after the event, when you're like either going to go out and socialize, especially if it's a 2-day event, or you've like driven up the day and then you're driving back, or traveled up that day and traveling back. There's a lot of external taxes when you go to events that people miss. And it's really important you also eat, right? I know some players don't eat when they're playing Kill Team at all, like all tournament, which is fine. It's not recommended, but that's why you need like this, it's just basic stuff. Eat, drink, and sleep, right? That will help so much. And I think it's something a lot of players overlook, especially when I've been speaking to some competitive players who are new to the game. Like they go like, oh, I'm really tired. And I was like, did you drink much? Did you have much food? And like, oh yeah, I had lunch and I drank something at lunch. And I was like, okay, so it's we're going into round 4. That was 4.5 hours ago. Have you had anything to eat or drink since? It's like, oh no. It's like, maybe you should just have some water and some snacks. And it really helps so much, right? It just makes you more relaxed and relieves the pressure for you. And it will help you so much after the event, because the worst thing I find, all this exhaustion and tiredness doesn't hit you until the event is over. So you, especially sometimes usually the next day. So if you rest up and make sure you've had enough food and drink, the next day or even after the tournament finishes, you'll be fine. Like your voice won't be so sore, you won't be so drained, and you're actually going to minimize the chances of getting sick. That's why so many people get sick after an event, because they've worn down their immune system so much, and then they get exposed to people who are being sick, and it just makes it all worse. So remember to always eat, always drink, and try and get enough sleep, and it will make your tournament results do so much better. Now, this is actually tied, I think, for the most important thing / the most important thing, and it's pick a good motivation for why you want to play at events. Now, I know a lot of people want to go to events because they want to win, and there's nothing wrong with that. But from personal experience, from what I've witnessed with friends and myself, I have to say, if you are going to tournaments and your only goal is to win, that is a very toxic mindset. Now, I'm not saying no one should go with the tournament, like go to a tournament going, I'm going to win this tournament. No, that's unrealistic. Some people can manage that very well, right? The problem is when you don't win that event, it eats away at you, because you were like, I didn't come first. I did not win the event. I've wasted my journey, all this time, all this practice, and I did not come first. Because the problem is you'll win and you go, great, won the event, everything went as planned. You lose and it will slowly eat away at you. And it may not happen at first, but the more you don't win events that you go to, the more it will eat away at you and make you less disincentivized to either play the game or ruin your motivation and make you kind of like horrible to play against, to the point where you go like, well, I've lost this round. There's still like 3 more rounds, but this tournament is pointless now. I just know I'm not going to win. So best I could do is maybe second or third. And the problem is I've seen so many people do it. I've seen people like drop events over it because they've lost a game and now can't win the event. It does become very toxic. And as I said, some people can manage this fine, but even the people who I've seen said they can, eventually it just eats away at them. And it used to do the same to me. Like when I started Underworlds, I think I was like, the first event I went to was Milton Keynes. And I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, I should win this. But I was very new to the game and I was like trying not to think it. And then I didn't, I came second. But then I was like, it was kind of eating away at me because I was like, oh, I've traveled all this way, done all this, and I only came second. And I was like, well, that's pointless. Like, came second, that's still a good result. That's why you really need to pick a good motivation to play at events, because if you don't find something that's sustainable, it's going to make it eat away at you and kind of probably become a toxic trait for you, not making you enjoy tournaments less, but also making you more unfun to play against. For example, I think it came to me like when I was once in Underworlds, and because with Underworlds, I'd won with every faction, right? I'd won with all 16 factions, and this time I was trying to just go like win with another faction, because I was like, okay, I've got the big tournament tomorrow, I'll play this, I'll just do this to show I can win with another faction, and I didn't. I got really tilted at the dice, and then I had to apologize to my opponent because I got really tilted at myself. And then one of my friends came to me after and he's like, John, why are you so upset? It's like, I was opposite you. And he was just like, you were just beating yourself up constantly. And I was like, well, yeah, I just couldn't win that game. I threw it away. And it's like, now this whole event is pointless. Like, he was like, look, you've done all this stuff. You don't need to win. Like, you're a good player. Just because you don't win an event doesn't mean you're bad. And like that really helped a lot and helped broaden my ideas. It's partly why I'm also so supportive of my club, Hate the Hackney Area Tabletop Enthusiasts, because they really showed me how you can be a competitive player without focusing on winning all the time. So good motivations that you can use to go to events. Going to meet new players because you're going to a new place to play events where people you haven't encountered before. Also going like, instead of going, oh, I'm going to go to this event to play new people, I'm going to the event to make it's a 4-round event. I'm going to make 4 new friends. A lot of people use that and it's very, very positive. Other things is going just to have fun, going like, yeah, I haven't practiced too much, but I just want to go and have a blast. For myself, this is like my main motivation, slash also when it comes to like trying to get painting awards, hobby awards. Because now like my main motivation when I go to events is just to kind of like meet more people, get more practice, see how people are playing and just have fun. It's partly why I go to America so much, because American events are very fun and everyone there is really cool. Not just like the UK isn't, but American events are very fun. Like go in there to have fun, try and get more games. A lot of people go to tournaments because they can't even get games like once a month. They go, I'm going to tournaments because this is how I play the game, right? I just want to get out and play games. Just going out to socialize, using the tournaments as a social thing is a great thing, as well as trying to improve your hobby. We have a lot of players, at least in the UK and around the world, who will go to tournaments just to show off their painting because they've worked a lot on their painting and hobby. They want to go for those painting awards, and those kind of goals to go are really positive. Another good positive, if you want to do well but don't want to focus on winning the event, is go, I want to go with at least 2 wins. Like let's say it's a 4-round tournament, go, I at least want 2 wins, or I want 1 win. I just want to win 1 game. I've been doing some more practice and at least you can build off of there, or go like, I want a podium finish, I want to finish in the top 8 or the top 3. That is kind of like more realistic than going, I just want to win. You want to pick something that's sustainable and positive. And I know it may seem silly, but literally if you pick your motivation for going to events is you just want to win, it really sours you in the long run, because it locks you into kind of like meta chasing, really fixating on dice not going your way, all these other external factors, and it can really bring the detriment of trying to enjoy events when in actuality, tournaments are really, really fun. They're a positive learning experience, both like from a social standpoint and a gameplay standpoint, which is why you need to pick a good motivation that will make you feel more positively reinforced and encourage you to continually go to events instead of having a bad event and then stop going altogether. And then finally, look, I'm repeating myself again, but you need to learn to lose. Look, people are going to lose, right? Remember, when you go to a tournament, unless there's not going to be more than 1 undefeated winner, everyone's going to lose apart from one person. And sometimes the person who wins the event can also lose and then still win. So it's not like, you know, losing is a failure of some point. In a lot of events, people are going to lose, especially when it comes to top cuts. Let's say you've got a 4-round tournament one day and then you've got the top cut the next day. I've qualified multiple times, going 3 wins and 1 loss, or 3 wins and a draw, and then going on to win the event next day in the top cut. Just because you've lost doesn't mean it's game over, right? And you can learn so much from your losses. Losses, especially in kill team with these kind of like low level, small scale skirmish games, you can really identify what went wrong, what you did incorrectly, and how you can improve. For example, did you play the mission wrong? Did you select the wrong tac ops? Did you play too aggressively? Did you play too defensively? Did you think your opponent was going to do something when they didn't do that whatsoever and they caught you off guard? There's so many things you can learn from, and you learn way more from your losses than winning, right? The problem is I see a lot of people get really dejected after they lost. And it's like, the thing is, look, losing games is normal. Obviously, it hurts when you lose a game, especially if you're going to try and be more successful at events. But I've seen people just like lose one game and then let it just ruin their entire event, because they get into this mindset where they get fixated on the loss. And it's stuff like blaming the dice. Look, I get it. There are games, look, I've played games where I have rolled nothing. And you in those games, it's like, fine, when you've rolled nothing and you just go like, yeah, you know what? This is just not my day, right? It's a dice game. If we had fixed variance, then this wouldn't be a fun game. That's the thing about dice. They're random. Like, sure, they have statistic probabilities to roll certain values, but the biggest problem I see when it comes to players at tournaments, they go, damn, I should have rolled 4 hits. And it's like, you know, actually 4 dice sitting on 3s, you're more likely to get 3 hits to 2 hits, not really getting 4 hits. And it's stuff like, oh, this should have happened because I wrote this. This is why we have so much variance, right? And you need to learn to move on from that. Obviously, you can go like in a key roll, damn, that was bad. But then you have to remember, oh, why was this a key roll? Oh, it's because I pushed forward aggressively, because if I won this dice roll, if this went in my favor, then I would have had this huge momentum to basically win the game. But if you think back from that, actually, if I just played a bit more cautiously, it would have led to a closer game, but then I could have waited later in the game, like turning point 3 or 4, to do this in a safer way where it won't backfire as hard. Because now it's turning point 2, I've lost my key piece, and now you're just going to push forward because I've lost my key damage piece. It's stuff like that, right? You can learn so much from losing, and losing can be such a positive thing. One thing I've tried to learn from people is, like, when my opponent rolls well, try and be positive about that. It's difficult, right? Because you're like, when your opponent rolls 4 crits and you're just like, damn, I'm dead. You go, nice, nice. You know, it's like, I did it once and someone was like, damn, you really can roll a crit. And I was like, that's the name. But, you know, that changes the dynamic of the game, because it makes it more enjoyable to play you. It kind of like, not that you should be aura farming, but it's good, right? You know, you want people to have fun playing against you, and if everyone is more positive about your losses, it helps and it makes you improve as a player, because especially when you try and break it down with your friends and other people you practice against, you can go, okay, this is what happened in this event. Maybe I approached it wrong, and they can go like, oh, actually, I think you were kind of playing too fast. We had a 2.5 hour round. You played as if we're playing 1 hour and 45, so you kind of rushed, right? If you actually dialed it back a bit, you would have been fine. It was like, oh, you actually misplayed the mission. You completely got that mission wrong. And if you approach it this way, that's why it's so useful, right? Because, you know, even though, look, I have won a lot of events, and I'm not going to, like, brush it up, but I've also lost a lot, right? You know, that's why I try and talk about most events that I play at, unless it comes to time scheduling. You know, there's so much you can get from, like, I played a tournament at the UKTC in Sheffield. I came second, just losing out an opponent win percentage, but it was really fun because I managed to get a lot of experience with my hand at the Archon, and I could see what I did wrong, because the opponent I lost to by 1 point had taken storm objectives, and basically I kind of just like ignored storm objectives when I actually should have really read how it worked, because I could have actually won that game if I played storm objectives against storm objectives correctly. I could have really denied that and won the game. But it's stuff like that. I wouldn't have learned that if I'd won, because if I'd beaten him, I still would have just been of the mindset, oh yeah, it's just storm objectives, no bother. But now I've got like, oh yeah, actually, I need to build up some more counterplay into storm objectives so I can more easily deny it, just because people don't use it so much. And that's why losing is so good, right? It's difficult, you know, losing is hard. But if you can learn to lose, not only do you learn so much from it, but you become a better player and more enjoyable to play against. So for my tournament tips overview, once again, it's practice, practice, practice. You really need to practice. Try and diversify the opponents you play against, not trying to play against the same people. And you can use tournaments for practice, right? Especially if you're going to different tournaments, you get to expose yourself to new players and new play styles, which helps broaden your own experience. Then it's always read the pack. Please, as a TO, just read the pack. You get to know what missions are being played, what kill zones are being used, how many rounds are, how long the rounds are, how the pairings and placing metrics are doing, what prizes there are. It's really important. It also tells you like if there's toilets on the premises, what food and drink is at the venue or nearby. Really, really useful information. Then also really important, you need to have snacks, hydration, and get enough sleep. Make sure, especially if you're doing 4-round events, depending on where lunch is, try and have something like a protein bar, some kind of form of complex carbs in between those rounds so you have a long, prolonged release of energy. Drink water regularly. You know, water really helps, but drinking anything, I mean, just not pure sugar drinks, but drinking water regularly helps stay hydrated, eases headaches, and also make sure your voice doesn't disappear. And try and get enough sleep before the event, ideally 6 to 8 hours. That'll make sure you're really rested and ready for the day ahead. Then also pick a good motivation to play at events. You need to find something that's sustainable and positive for you. You can go to events with the goal of just winning, but when you don't win those events, it really eats away at you. So try and pick something like trying to meet new players, trying to get more games in, play different opponents, trying to get at least a 50% win rate at tournaments, going like, oh, this is a 4-round tournament, I want to win 2 rounds. That kind of stuff. Really positive enforcement to make not only that you enjoy events, but so it's sustainable and people like enjoy playing at you. Because if you pick something toxic, when it doesn't go your way, it's going to slowly eat away at you and make you a less fun opponent to play against. And then finally, learn to lose. Once again, Kill Team is a great game for where you can identify what you've done wrong and learn from and how to improve upon. And not also that, it makes you an enjoyable opponent to play against. Because remember, when it comes to tournaments, there's only going to be one person who's very likely not to drop any games. So it's highly statistically probable that you are going to drop a game and you need to learn how to lose. Because if you become toxic when you lose, it will eat away at you and make you a worse player and less enjoyable to play against. But learning from how you lose is so positive because it means you won't make those mistakes again and be exposed to something new that you can practice off of. But those are my tips. Once again, it's very generalist in a way, based off of my long years of playing Warhammer competitively and my mistakes, because these are all mistakes I've made that I've learned from. The key thing I don't think I've made too much a mistake of was practice. This is something I learned from my friends who play X-Wing. They always try and diversify, well, when X-Wing was alive. And it's something I've always continued to maintain today. I'll always play someone new, no matter their skill level. Obviously, if I'm going to a hyper-competitive event, I may not play someone newer before that event. But generally, I try to, because the thing is, when you play people of different skill levels, they all approach the game differently in ways you won't expect. So that's why even if you're playing someone you don't think, that's not that competitive, they can open your eyes in ways you didn't expect. But yeah, hopefully this is a useful learning tool to not only just make you better at Kill Team, but more enjoyable to play against, because some people master this way better than I do. Like, for example, a lot of the players at Knott's Kill Team are really fun to play against, and they do well at events. They're like really good. It's also people at my club from Hate, the Hackney Area Tabletop Enthusiasts. You've got so many amazing competitive players there who are just a laugh to play. You'll have so much fun playing them. And that's the kind of thing I aspire to be as a competitive player myself. But hopefully all these tools are helpful, and coupled with my how to improve in Kill Team video, these 2 videos, especially if you want to aim to be a more competitive player, hopefully they help to make you more useful, well, a better Kill Team player overall. But that's pretty much it from me today. Please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video. Did you find it useful or helpful? Are there any tips I missed out? Let me know. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, and a affiliate link on Games, a affiliate link on Discord called Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. I'm just going to quickly shout my patrons. So for my adepts of the career, I have Tom, the Houston Toad, Super Cow, Sam, Nick, Mercenary Q, Mr. Meekwad, Marshall, Lucas, Jeremiah Graham, Fangzu Draken, Dave Meetswell, Dan, Dada Goldens, Chris, and Amorphium. So thank you so much for all your support. It really means a lot to me and helps support the channel. But yeah, I'm currently busily painting away. I've got 2 more tournaments coming up next week, Warhammer World and Norwich. And then I've also got the Goonhammer Open in May, which I'm running on May the 10th. So please come down. We are about 50% of the tickets sold. We've got the Goonhammer Trophy Bout and golden tickets and tons of prizes. So I'd love to have you all there. But remember, no matter what happens when you come to tournaments, you always have a chance to win, as long as you can roll a crit.